impacts. You just can't.
Right. I think we've started live streaming.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah, just begun.
Okay. So I'll start. Good evening to everyone who's tuned in. Today we are here to discuss on the theme of political aspects of freebies. And we are joined by two eminent speakers. Allow me to introduce them to you. Dr. Avinash Kumar teaches at the Center for Informal Sector and Labor Studies, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He is currently a visiting researcher at the University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, South Africa, where he is working on his manuscript, Theorizing Wage Violence. His major research and teaching include political economy of labor, politics of informality, migration, and movements of the marginalized sections in India. He has done extensive fieldwork to examine labor regimes and patterns of labor control in India. He has also recently co-edited a book called Laboring Women, Issues and Challenges in Contemporary India, published by Orient Black Swan. A very, very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tia. Thank you so much for having us on your show.
Thank you, sir. Allow me to also introduce our next speaker. Dr. Manish Kumar teaches in the Department of Economics, Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. He also holds the position of Executive Director of Center for Development Economics, TSE. His main areas of research include agriculture, labor and industry. A very, very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So to start off our discussion, what are the various definitions and interpretations of the term freebies as mentioned in the RBI June 2022 bulletin, and also by different experts? And why has this term been used in a disparaging manner or tone?
Thank you once again, Tia, for having us on this show. It's very an important issue, and I'm glad that EPW selected this as a matter of discussion. So thank you once again. Now, let me begin by saying that one of the fundamental motive for me and Manish to write this paper was to tell this in a very loud manner, that the so-called, what we are calling as freebies, there is very less of economics and more of politics into understanding and, terming this term called freebies. And it comes from a very ideological position, which is being hidden under the motives that the neoliberal order is trying to impose on various parts of the world, particularly in the global south. Now, as you were talking about the RBI paper and various other experts, we have actually addressed three papers. First is the RBI. The other is by N.K. Singh, who was the former chairperson of the Finance Commission. And then there is an SBI paper by S.K. Ghosh, where once again, now, what you will find in all these three papers, what is the common theme emerging is that they term any state expenditure on particularly four broad sectors, which is education, health, employment, and agriculture. Any state expenditure on these sectors as freebies, because they think that it is not financially sustainable. Now, the moment you say that something is not financially sustainable without addressing the core constituency and the core, economic and the political problems of the society, I think there is an ideological, intention to it, and therefore it becomes very difficult to accept any of these papers do not actually go into the qualitative reasoning behind why such state expenditure should be termed as freebies. I mean, we do have a big problem with the term itself, because it is about classifying a certain kind of expenditure as freebies and not others freebies. Right. So states have to decide. Any state expenditure is a political statement, and states have to decide based on the need of the society, need of the economy. And I think we have argued very well that actually, to be very frank, there exists no definition of freebies. Everyone is talking in terms of whatever they like to say, right? So some schemes can be termed as freebies, whereas others may be justified as a non-freebie. So there is no quantitative reasoning behind it, and that is what we have discussed in our paper, including the 3 papers that we have critiqued in our.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you underscore the need to actually rethink the term freebies itself, because I think it creates a barrier or sort of a gap between the state and the receivers. Right. So how does the request by the Election Commission of India for political parties to disclose the financial implications of their promises affect the country's political landscape? And does it align with the principles of the welfare state?
Well, and that's again a very interesting topic, and this was one of the impetus for us to actually get into this, because when we saw that it is not just remaining, within the political terminology in terms of addressing between the parties, but when constitutional bodies like Election Commission of India actually starts writing a letter, and I'm sort of underscoring this point because they say available financial spaces. Now, I mean, this is a very problematic idea because an election commission cannot restrict political parties to think beyond the existing financial spaces. I mean, the very problematic idea of the letter is to tell us that within the available financial spaces, what can you do? I mean, you know that when political parties lose elections and new political parties come in, there is a whole new dimension that can come into in terms of generating finances, addressing certain needs, prioritizing certain needs, and addressing the economy. Now, to say that you want every political party to actually address it in advance, especially when you know that there is this whole majoritarian democratic upturn, which is upsurge, which is actually going in a very flawed direction, where you do not have really space for having a very good sound dialogue. How anything can be misused against any political party in terms of their intention and their motive, and for a constitutional body like Election Commission of India, instead of addressing one of those very fundamental issues like electoral bonds, if they go into asking political parties to restrict themselves within the financial spaces available, I think that's a very problematic idea for us at least. And that's where we thought that this was not very democratic, and it actually is, we have also said in our article that the idea of a freebie is actually anti-poor, anti-national, and also anti-constitutional. So a constitutional body, therefore, cannot use those political sort of sloganeering and use this as a tool to kind of put pressure on political parties, and particularly the opposition parties, to sort of address it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And do you also think that then it becomes more, when we approach freebies, it becomes more election-centric and party-centric instead of being people-centric?
Absolutely, absolutely. Therefore, I said it is anti-people, right? It is anti-people, it is anti-poor, it is anti-national, and also anti-constitutional. So when we say anti-constitutional, it means that there are certain constitutional provisions. Constitution promises a living wage, a decent wage, a promise for everyone, a promise to dream. And by restricting political parties to asking political parties to surrender before you in terms of their plans and their promises, which anyway all political parties do in their manifesto. But to say that the Election Commission will now judge whether your political manifesto can carry this or not is something very, very anti-democratic.
Absolutely. Now coming to you, Dr. Manish Kumar, could you explain the concept of crowding out as mentioned in your article? And why does the neoliberal stand believe that the government expenditure lead to a reduction in private investment opportunities?
Thanks, Tia. Thanks for this question. Very interesting question, in fact. So one thing that is very clear to all of us, the freebies, if you would like to, it carries more political sense than economic sense, as Avinash has rightly pointed out. So that is one thing, because we don't know what is actually freebies mean, because you have different things. Sometimes you'll dislike one particular expenditure of the government, and then
Yes.
you defame it by calling it freebie. So that is one way of looking at the entire discussion. If at all, if we are interested to look at or the trace some economic meaning of freebie, if that is what we are trying to do, then we trace the root of this entire thing in the crowding out theory. And not only crowding out theory, which is actually emerging from new liberal understanding or new classical understanding, which actually hates the government expenditure. So the main argument which is coming from this crowding out theory is that if you would increase government expenditure, then that would discourage the private investment in the economy. How? So basically, it is suggested that if you have, if government is increasing some expenditure on something, then that would have some negative impact on the interest rate. And as a result of that, private investment would be discouraged. So this is the whole idea of crowding out theory. Now, the flaw of this theory is actually very much rooted or deeply rooted in its assumption. One of the assumptions of crowding out theory is basically all factors of production in an economy are fully employed. So which is actually not possible in any real world economy.
Okay.
So you cannot see all workers available in any economy are fully employed, right? So all factors of production cannot be fully employed at any real point of time. So if that is true, then this idea of crowding out is very much questionable. Then you cannot have crowding out theory. And there are many empirical papers which has studied the relation between government expenditure and behavior of the private investment. They have said categorically that they have not noticed any crowding out of the private investment as a because of the increase in the government expenditure. And this is also clear in case of India. We have multiple empirical papers, and that we have referred in our article as well.
Right. So you also mentioned, when we talk about crowding out, you mentioned that things are being looked at from a strictly international finance lens. So how does that affect the domestic architecture?
So basically, our economy, whatever we are doing in India right now, that is not precisely designed, or the theoretical construct is not only from India. We are borrowing something from the West. Their real world or their concrete situation would be different from what we are facing in India. So that would be totally different. So one would be that the level of inequality that we are experiencing, economic inequality I'm mentioning. So the level of economic inequality that we are mentioning is actually at a very high level. So for that, we may need some kind of treatment in our economy that may not be required for other economies that that is generally suggested us to look at.
Absolutely. A more customized, tailored fit for the Indian context.
Yeah.
So how has the shift from universal coverage to targeted delivery in the public distribution system affected food security in India? And what role has export promotion of agricultural products played in this context?
So basically, this is also very much relevant what you have just asked, related to the global situation and the global finance and their dominance in our policy design. So in that context, also in mid 1990s, before that we used to have universal PDS system, public distribution system, where all citizens of India were entitled to receive some food items from the government through a fair price of etc. Those things. So that was the provision, but we converted that into targeted system. That is one thing that happened in as a result of the new economic policy that we adopted in 1991. As a result of that, what happened that the entire design of our food security system, which actually includes production, then distribution, utilization, etc. Those things. There are 4 dimensions of food security. So the converting our policy of universal PDS to targeted PDS not only damaged or not only created some form of exclusion, not only created some problem of exclusion, but it also damaged the entire foundation of food security. Precisely the distribution aspect of food security that was very much damaged as a result of that. So basically this design, this new liberal design, which we are questioning in our paper, that is not only discouraging government expenditure, but that is also discouraging the direction of government expenditure. So in one sense, targeted PDS or the PDS system as a whole used to benefit more poor, right? And if you are making it targeted policy, then there would be some kind of problem of exclusion. And who are excluded in that system? You would read many news from different parts of the country that because of missing Aadhaar data, they are not. Some poor family is not able to access to their PDS, etc. Those things. So those missing entitlements are precisely because of these things. So this entire design of new liberal economy or new liberal policy design, they are not only questioning the government expenditure, but they are also questioning the direction of government expenditure. That's why when you spend money for some corporate, when you subsidize their functioning, then there won't be a very loud noise. But when you distribute something to some poor household, then people would call that you are distributing freebies or some kind of reverie that they would like to discourage. So this is one classical example that is in front of us, which is result of the new liberal design of policy that is we are facing in India right now.
Right. I know this is a complex question to ask, but do you think there's some factors which have led to this new liberal approach in particular strengthening in India?
Exactly. You have asked, you had the answer in your previous question itself.
Okay.
The entire construct of the fiscal capital, that finance capital that we are operating with. So that is responsible. So you would like to maybe you would like to create your policy or design your policy in favor of corporate, and you would like to impress them more than the poor of the country. So that is one responsible factor for the overall design that we are witnessing at the moment.
So we're looking for selective wins for selective monopolistic groups of people.
Exactly. When you have a corporate subsidy in the budget of very large amount, 1,76,000 last year or last year, then you don't have any problem with that, because that is going to that is going to benefit the corporate of country who are asked to create employment, but as we are witnessing that they are not creating employment in India. Their employment creation or their expansion of business are very much guided by the profit motive.
Sure. So you write that a crucial factor that remains neglected altogether is the inequality mitigating impact of government expenditure. Could you elaborate more on this?
Yeah. So on the one side, you have a theory that suggests the crowding out theory that suggests that government expenditure should be discouraged because that is hampering or that is damaging the private investment. And when private investment is damaged, then your employment scenario and the overall economy would suffer. That is one set of idea that you have. There is another side of the debate, which is not new. In fact, almost a century ago, Keynes, Kahn, multiplier, they countered this crowding out theory. And they said that this crowding out theory is actually a false theory. There is nothing like crowding out. So as to counter this theory, they proposed some other thing that is we call multiplier thing. So what is multiplier? If you are in any economy, if you spend some money, then that expenditure would have some multiplier impact in the economy that would create growth in the economy. And in most of the economy, growth is one of the desirable factor. So if you would like to have growth in the economy, then you should have more and more expenditure. So this multiplier idea, the multiplier theory basically says that which is connected with the marginal propensity to consume that we have explained in our paper. So marginal propensity to consume is proportional to your growth. So if you have higher marginal propensity to consume, you will have higher growth, higher multiplier impact. This is what we have. Now, let me give you one example to elaborate it further. So in any economy, there would be different class. In our economy as well, we would see that different class. So one class, let's call it the poor, working class, etc., who would actually consume whatever they earn. And there would be another class, which is basically business class, corporate, or big corporate houses. They are actually saving whatever they earn. So the proportion of their consumption out of their total income is very less. Right. So this is how you can divide your society into two parts, two classes. If that is true, then basically, if you are giving 100 rupee to a poor, it's most likely that they would consume 100 rupees. But if you give 100 rupee to some corporate house, then that 100 rupees is meaningless for them. Right. So if government expenditure is not creating some negative impact on the private investment, if we are settled on that, that is one thing. Second thing is, if government is asked to spend money, then which class of the society it should target? So obviously that we are proposing that since the marginal propensity to consume of the poor class would be very high, and higher marginal propensity to consume would have very high growth impact in the economy. So ideally, government should target the poor section of the society so that we can also achieve, which is desirable for the economy, higher growth. And apart from higher growth, that would also cause a decline in the very big economic inequality that we are facing at the moment.
Right. And also the nourishment of human capital, right? As economists would like to say. Could you share some examples that support the idea that government subsidies, often labeled as freebies, can actually have a positive impact on society?
So this is in continuation of what I have just said. So you have multiple examples in India. Let's consider about, you would read many articles or many reports, some from the those who are close to the government. They would say that expenditure for agriculture or farmer, all those things are basically freebies. This is what they would say. So generally they target subsidy part of it. So there was one report, one famous report by the Ministry of Agriculture of Government of India long back. So in that report, they highlighted that if you would remove the subsidy from the agriculture, particularly fertilizer subsidy and electricity subsidy, if you would remove that, there would be disastrous impact on the economy, especially in the form of rising food inflation, etc. So this expenditure of the government to subsidize farming activity is actually not transfer of money to the farmers. That is actually helping the entire economy. So whatever subsidy farmers get, that is not going in the pockets of farmers. They are coming in our stomach in terms of the food, right? If those subsidies are not there, then it would be quite possible that a larger portion of our society would not be able to buy food items which at those prices. So that is one example. Let me give you another example, a very famous example that has been quoted in different reports recently. One example by bicycle distribution by the NDA government in Bihar. That time, JDU and BJP, they were together, and Nitish Kumar government distributed bicycle. Some expenditure that we call freebie in the current time, that may have very long-term impact. So there was a paper by someone in US, I forgot the name, but if someone is interested, I can share that paper. So they have studied, they did some field work in Bihar, and they studied the impact of distribution of bicycles in Bihar. So the gender gap in education, that declined. The dropout rate of women from schooling, that declined. So all those impacts are there. Similarly, in case of Uttar Pradesh, laptop distribution, their digital education, digital literacy, that increased. So all those things are there. You have some program to support digital education or digital literacy in India by the current government. But on the other hand, if some program is increasing that thing, that should not be discouraged. So there are multiple impacts. There are various impacts, some short-term impacts and long-term impacts of this kind of programs. That cannot be discouraged. That cannot be delegitimized.
The distribution of bicycles is a very interesting example, because when it comes to gender, women's access to education is actually limited by their access to mobility.
Exactly.
And we need to be very, very conscious of these subtleties that control large number of lives on a daily basis.
And someday, if you are interested to draw or make some sort of index of woman empowerment, then possibly the movement, women's movement, would be one possible indicator of that.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Avinash Kumar, what kind of an impact would completely letting go of the so-called freebies have on addressing inequalities?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question to answer, because what we have been arguing is trying to tell you is that what is being termed as freebies is not a freebie. And actually, it is a constitutional promise being delivered to the people of this country. Now, to think of a situation in which you withdraw from those constitutional promises is something, as Manish has really said, it would be disastrous. Now, there is absolutely no doubt about it across the political spectrum. I mean, and I think even the neoliberals would have to accept it, because for them, data is the god, and the data says so, that in the last 30 years of this so-called growth period in India has not been able to produce enough employment across for the majority of the population. In fact, at times it has been negative, and we Now, in this situation, I just wanted to quote you with one particular data, which is about, if you look at the decline in the wage to profit ratio from early 1991-92 to say 2019 and 20, it was from 1.41, it has declined to just 0.44. And in this condition, where there is a complete onslaught of this neoliberal order, to think of withdrawal of these constitutional promises is a direct onslaught on the livelihood and the lives of people. And let us not forget, which is one point which we have not yet discussed and we have not yet addressed, is the question of fiscal federalism. India is a federal character. The Constitution actually promises a federal character of its character. So in that context, you have different state governments who have different political spectrum in which they run, and they have been doing pretty well. And I think in that case, you have these two examples of what Manish and we have quoted in the paper about the bicycle distribution and the laptop. But you also have different models. So you have the Kerala model, you have the Dravidian model, which is the Tamil Nadu model, and you have several other models. And you also have the so-called Gujarat model, not to comment more on that. But I think it is quite obvious, and it is quite open for any academic to actually analyze and compare these models to understand what empowers the people, what empowers the real people. And hence, for me, I think we are already one of the most unequal societies in the world, as you rightly pointed out, on any dimension, whether it is gender, whether it is caste, whether it is class, you are very unequal. And in those circumstances, to imagine of a situation where the state actually withdraws those constitutional promises actually is going to be really, really disastrous. And we can't, sort of imagine that situation. And therefore, for us, it is very important to outrightly reject the term freebies, because, as I said, the freebies are not derived from a qualitative understanding, qualitative study of certain state expenditure. It is only being derived from a political point of view in terms of blaming some states and others and forgiving oneself into the political domain. And I think as an academic, it is important for us to not accept those terms and to critically engage and inquire those. That's what our limited attempt has been on this paper. And I think it is very important to press that if we at all are interested in addressing the question of inequality, the rising inequality in India and across the world, I think government expenditures are one of those important dimensions which we cannot forget. And we cannot allow this vilification of government expenditure for a particular class of people and celebrating that for the same, because as you know, the government is going before the corporate to come and asking them to invest and the private sector is not investing because they don't have confidence. And they don't have confidence because they know that the condition of the poor, larger majority of the poor people is very bad. And that can only be improved if you empower them. Okay, by what means we can debate, how we can have, what are the better means we can debate, but we cannot allow this vilification of this government expenditure for a particular class of people, which is very problematic.
Very, very well put, Professor. So, like you said, government expenditure, and it becomes particularly important in times where everything goes against you, which is the pandemic, right? Which really brought out the inequalities in our society and showed, throw light on how much the government can do or cannot do to improve the plight of the people. Professor Manish, do you have any final comments to make?
No, nothing from my side. I would like to say that, so in our central idea in this paper was just to highlight and to contribute in this entire debate that let's not discourage the government expenditure, in particular the state government's expenditure, because if you would look at the distribution of work from the constitution point of view, then larger works are on the shoulders of large amount of works are on the shoulder of the state government, and they should be actually encouraged to meet their constitutional commitments.
Right.
So we should not call it freebies. In fact, we should encourage the government expenditure, and we should channelize the government expenditure towards the poor. That is more needed, and that would also give us some desirable outcomes that we are seeking.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we can call it a wrap to this session. Thank you to everyone who patiently tuned in. If you're interested in reading Professor's article, it's available on our website. And I'd like to take out a moment to also request you to please support EPW, subscribe to us, follow us on our social media channels. A very, very warm and a sincere thank you to both our speakers for presenting so many insights and sharing those invaluable case studies with us. I'm sure there's a lot to talk about even after this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tia, so much. And thank you to